When I talk about the syllabus for this class, I am referring to this document that I handed out. I am not referring to that link on Canvas that says syllabus that is auto-created by Canvas and has deadlines. I'm always referring to this file or this document. All right, so LAS 2.2, Introduction to U.S. Latino History and Culture. I am teaching two sections of this class this semester. There is this one that starts at 1 o'clock, and right after this one at 2:30, there's another one. If anyone wants to switch to the second section, there is room in that one. Or even if you don't switch, if you stay in this one, if you ever, for whatever reason, need to sit through the lecture of the next one, it's not a problem. There's plenty of this section is full, but the other section is like 60% full. So there's a lot of seats. If anyone wants to switch, or just if you ever need to catch the next one, you can. So you don't have to, there's section 2, which gives you some flexibility. So my name is Gerardo Licon, Dr. Licon, Professor Licon, any of those work well. My email, my office phone number, my office, Hibbert 353. So it's right upstairs and down the hall over by the elevators on the east side of the building. Third floor. My office hours this semester are Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday and Thursday, 4 to 5. Fridays, 1 to 2. There is a link here for you to make an appointment during my office hours. If my office hours don't work for you, then just email me and we can come up with a different date and time that works for both of us. So this class is interdisciplinary, introductory, covers, it's in that it is very cursory, meaning we don't go into depth into everything. We touch on a lot of things in order to go over really thousands of years of history, although of course we focus on the last 250. Let's see. Read the whole syllabus on your own. I'm not going to read it all right now. Read it on your own. Let me know what questions come up. By taking this class, you get R1, K3, and DD, Design for Diversity. This class has the largest percentage of your grade for this class comes from the tests. There are 3 tests. Then after that, the single assignment that is worth the largest percentage by itself is a research paper that's worth 30%. Participation is only 5%, and there's the final for the class that is worth 10%. The tests are multiple choice. And multiple choice. The research paper, there is a document on Canvas that gives you greater detail on what the expectations are for the research paper. In fact, there's 4 pages of information to help you get 100% on a 4-page paper. So there's a lot of information there, not just this. Participation. Participation is the participation grade, which is only 5%, is determined by your answering of a daily mini quiz on Canvas. Let's see if I could pull that up here. Share. There we go. So different ways to get to this. You can go to assignments and participation. Um, by the way, let's see, when you look at this as a student, I think the default is to show you based on the deadlines that are coming up. When my default is to show by type. And so if you ever want to see what I'm showing you, you go to show by type in order to see the way that I organize it and the way I see it. So that you can, you know, translate what I'm showing you to what you see. All right, so you can find it from the homepage looking at these things that are coming up, or you can go to assignments, participation. For each day of class, there are two things there. One is not graded, and it gives you information that is helpful of the expectations for that day. And so, these are not graded, letting you know you have to complete a mini quiz. Here's the link for the first mini quiz. And then here I put links that are useful to study for the content of the class on this day. And so there I have old recordings. And if I make changes, I update them. I try to update them by like 5 o'clock that same day. And that's also helpful, once it's getting close to time for the tests, or even after class, if you want to, that you took notes and Professor Lacombe talks fast, and you want to, look up what he said about a certain topic, there are recordings there that you can play that'll can fill in and remind you what I said about whatever. So yeah, they're old recordings, but I keep them the same unless I make changes to the lecture, and then I update them by 5 o'clock that same day. Yep. So then here we have the mini quiz that I was talking about. Today's is worth 3 points, and this first one is just practice. It's You don't need to have read anything. It's basically about the syllabus. So if you listen to my explanation about the syllabus, or you read the syllabus, then you're ready to answer the first mini quiz. And again, it's just practice. In fact, you can take these mini quizzes twice. And after that, it'll show you the correct answers. So some students just get in the habit of always taking it twice and then seeing the correct answers. The questions on the mini quizzes are drawn from the same question banks that the tests draw from. So the questions that are in the mini quizzes could be the same questions you get on the test. And so again, the purpose of them is to be, good practice in preparation, to give you a good idea of the types of questions that you'll find on the test based on lectures, readings, films, etc. There is a film or documentary uh, about once per week, not always, but typically. Typically, there is, for each day of class, there is one chapter from one of the two books or readings that are on Canvas. So for each day of class, there's one chapter, and for each week, there is one film or documentary. That's typically the amount of reading and the expectations of what you need to do per week. The final cumulative essay is worth 10% of your final course grade. We'll talk more about that later, but I will introduce you to it now. Let's see. I mentioned the research paper and these links to the requirements that help you do well. And then right now, the last thing I mentioned from the syllabus was the final. The final is not a surprise. Today, you can look up on Canvas what your final for this class is going to be. I have these three prompts, and you're going to write an essay about one of these three. But before the end of the semester, I am going to narrow it down to two. So if from the beginning of the semester you pick your two favorite ones and you start outlining them or taking notes, whenever you think something that is brought up in the class can be relevant to the final, you can start making an outline from the beginning of the semester. So, so yeah, the final here are the requirements for the final. One essay that is 3 to 4 pages long. Extra credit. Uh, if you attend an event that relates to this class, but is not part of the class, not required by the class, that can count for extra credit. So if there's a new Hollywood movie, if Netflix or any other streaming service releases something new that relates to this class, it can count as extra credit. If there's events on campus, if during spring break you go travel somewhere and visit a museum or something that relates to this class, anything like that. Anything outside of the class that relates to the class can count for extra credit. It can give you a 2% boost in your final course grade for each extra credit assignment. You can do up to 3 extra credit assignments for up to a 6% boost on your final course grade. In addition to attending the event or watching the film or documentary, what you turn in is 2 pages. It's a 1-page summary of the event, a half-page reflection, and a half-page on how it relates to the course. So you turn in 2 pages and you get a 2% boost in your final course grade. That's how that works. And all of these things we can talk more about later. There is a Facebook page for this class, Lacone LAS 222. It is not required, it is not graded, but it is a place where sometimes it's the most convenient place for me to share information about extra credit opportunities or current events that relate to the class. And so you don't have to go on there, but it can be beneficial to you to do so. Email. Basically, whenever you email me, please let me know what class you're in. This class right here, right now, is an LAS 222, Section 1. It just saves me time when you let me know what class and section number you're in. It's very common for students to email me, "Hey, Professor Lacone, this is Mike from your LAS class. Can you tell me this or that?" Oh, and it's a quick question, and then this or that. But it saves me a lot of time, especially when, if I have 120 students per semester, if you let me know what class and section you're in, they add up. And so, every minute that you spare me, that you save me, adds up for the 120 students per semester. So I appreciate it if you let me know. Yeah, and then the other thing is, I do not promise that I'll be that I'm going to be checking email right before class, or I don't know, that I'm going to reply to your email at 1 in the morning or anything like that. Like, I promise I'll get back to you within a day during business hours. So, you know, unfortunately, we're not text buddies and, don't, yeah, I just don't promise that I'm gonna be getting back to you right away, regardless of the day or time you email me. All right. Honesty and plagiarism. Don't cheat. If you cheat, you'll be penalized. There are there are websites and phone apps that can help you study, especially, since the tests are multiple choice. There are apps and websites that help you create flashcards, for example, that, are useful to help you study. I do not prevent you from using those. You should use them if they help you study. I think they would help me, so I would totally use them myself for that kind of test. What I ask you to do if you use those is that you not make your flashcards available to the public. Make your settings private so that you can benefit from them, but you're not releasing them to everyone online. So yeah, you can use them, but keep them to yourself. And then AI. Um, everything that you turn in for this class gets run through the Turnitin software. And, AI is a growing concern. Um, Last semester, when I was grading research papers, out of the first three papers I graded, two of them were written by AI. And I was so disappointed, disheartened, and I was ready to get rid of the research paper, and do something else entirely. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of professors are going back in time. Instead of taking advantage of the benefits of Canvas, we're going back to blue books and writing in class and no open notes, open anything, um, to avoid these issues. So I was disheartened from the first three I graded. Fortunately, I had to grade the rest. And when I did, uh, I didn't come across any others out of the whole batch that were written by AI. I just happened to it was a coincidence that out of the first three, two of them had been written by AI. So that lifted my spirits up a little bit. But yeah, just know I personally I think that things like Grammarly, where it helps you with your writing, is very helpful. Um, Unfortunately, even Grammarly now has like an AI function as well. And so that can go off into it writing everything for you instead of just helping you with your writing. Um, but yeah, just know if your paper is flagged as more than 25% written by AI, then you're going to be penalized by that percent. So yeah, we can talk more about it. We can see, as we go along, try to figure it out. I know that the Turnitin software is not perfect. There's been times when I get papers that are clearly written by AI that are not flagged as AI, and vice versa. Papers where I'm like, this seems very legitimate to me. This person is telling me they went to this event. They're telling me, I was there, or they're telling me what they experienced there. Like AI couldn't have told them what this person talked about at this event. Um, so I know that the content of it is theirs, even if they got some help with the writing and then it gets flagged as AI. So I do use my own judgment. It's not just automatic it got flagged as AI, and that means it's AI, and you're going to be penalized. I do use my own judgment, and it's not set in stone. Feel free to talk to me if you ever get penalized for AI usage, and you didn't, you know, um, try not to get mad. Just set up an appointment and let's talk about it. Let's try to figure out what happened, so that we can be fair. Be fair about the expectations and the work that gets turned in. If you need any special accommodations, please go to the Office of Students with Disabilities office, so that you get what they call a visa, so that we can make sure that you get the accommodations you need. And also, if English is not your first language, there may be opportunities for you to get assistance of some sort as well. So go to the office, get that done in advance. Do not wait until right before the test. And to try to get this done, try to do this as early as possible. I have students that have already done this before the first day of class. So good job to those of you that have done that already. All right. The 30th is the last day to register. February 6th, last day to drop. April 10th, last day to withdraw with a W. Required readings for the class. I mentioned that these are the two books that you're expected to get a hold of. Does anyone have any issues to report? Did the bookstore run out of them or anything like that? No, excellent. Do make sure that they are these two editions. If your book looks different than these two, talk to me so we can try to figure it out. I know for Enrique's Journey, one of the issues is sometimes students buy the young adult edition. That's basically the high school version that it's censored to be appropriate to minors, whereas this one is not censored. All right. Today is the 26th of January, day one. I keep track of each day, by the day number. There are no readings due today. You should download the study guide for test one. Let's take a look at that. So on the home page, you can find the syllabus, and you can find everything you need for the first test, beginning with the study guide. So the first reading is Gonzalez chapter 1, and these are the study guide questions, along with page numbers where you can find the answers. So download the study guide, go to the Facebook page, click like. I will say that when you go to the class Facebook page and click like, that doesn't mean that you and I become Facebook friends. That's different. This is kind of like a third space. Like you have your own profile, I have my own, and then there's the class one. And so that you clicking the course like on the class page doesn't mean that we become friends, doesn't mean that I now have access to, your, whatever they call them, your stories and your page and what you post and your photos and so forth, or mine. That all depends on your and my privacy settings for our own thing. But yeah, just in case that's a concern. On Canvas, make sure that you have a close-up picture of your face to help me know who's who in the class. And then there is the daily mini quiz. Normally, they are due right before the beginning of class. Like the ideal time to take them is an hour before class. But I make them available. I try to make them available since the previous class, and there is no penalty for you to turn it in right before the next class. So what does that mean? For day 2, for example, that is available starting today after class, and you can turn it in as late as right before class on February 1st. And when I say right before class, it's not, it might be like noon, like an hour before class. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility there. It's technically due right before class, but you can turn it in earlier or later. There's about a day of class of flexibility there. And for day 1, this one, I think you get a whole month to turn it in. Again, it's practice. Some students add the class late, and so for whatever reason, you can turn that in later. By Wednesday, the second day of class, you are expected to have read chapter 1 of Gonzalez. And again, you have the study guide to help you know what to focus on. Everything that will be on the test from Gonzalez chapter 1 will come straight from those study guide questions. So if you have the answer to the study guide questions, you're prepared for what will end up on the test. Yeah. So this day 2 mini quiz will include Gonzalez chapter 1 and will include today's lecture. And then there's no film this week. But starting next week, there'll be a film each week. Let's see.